Hello chess friends and welcome to your chess channel and welcome to a new chess opening madness tournament that's going on now these days. These chess opening madness tournaments are really cool, I think, if you want to prepare for an opening or something, because we have seen some great battles in the King's Gambit, King's Indian, maybe in the Dutch defense. I think the tournament was also organized. We have seen also great Evans Gambit tournament. That was the last prearranged opening tournament that the engines had to play, and the Lila C0 won the Evans Gambit tournament, which was really cool. Lila C0 played simply the best chess in that sharp opening. Now the engines have to battle it out in the Ne4 Sicilian. The Ne4 Sicilian is really one of the sharpest Sicilians that you can play, that you can choose, and so far in the lead are two engines, Stockfish 13 and this other top engine Dragon. So Lila C0 is now only on the third place, so you see Lila is good in some openings, Lila is not so good in some other openings. Stockfish 13 also in some openings, Lila is better than Stockfish. We'll see now what will happen in the Ne4 Sicilian. I think the Ne4 Sicilian is still popular in top grandmaster level, and also maybe in this intermediate level in chess. I think the Ne4 is very often played, so that's why I think we can use some of the Stockfish ideas and also some of this Lila C0 Dragon ideas in order to improve our skills in this very sharp opening. So let's check out now one great game. It's a game played by Stockfish 13 against another top engine Stockfish. Here E4, we have C5, knight to F3 D6, C takes D4, knight to D4, here knight to F6, knight to C3, and after A6 we have reached the common Ne4 Sicilian position. So okay, what to do here? Here bishop to G5 was still prearranged. I like this idea. I think it's one of the best methods to beat the Ne4 Sicilian, because if you play, for instance, something like B5, if you advance too early, I think here from white's perspective, from black's perspective, then you could lose the game position. I think bishop to F6 comes as a great idea, because you have to then take G takes F6, and I've reached similar positions, not the same, but I've reached similar position in the Tory attack. I've played several times the Tory attack, and I simply gave up my bishop for a knight, double up the pawn structure, and then I simply occupied these weaknesses in black's position. I simply like this idea. It's a natural idea, simply provoking weaknesses, although you're giving up the bishop pair. But you see in this particular line in the Ne4 Sicilian, black has several problems to protect the F5 weakness, also to protect the D5 weakness, and then I think black has also several problems where to castle. Queenside castling is not a good opportunity. You have already advanced your pawns too much on the queenside, then we could break the position with ideas of A4, and if you castle maybe kingside, then bishop to D3 could happen. You know, when you castle, then the H7 is a clear target with the activity of the bishop here, with the activity of the queen, maybe with some E5 discoveries. Black could be also in serious tactical problems on the king side. So that's why I simply like this idea, as I said. So simply give up the bishop for a knight, provoke some weaknesses, and then activating your pieces, find good new squares on the board. So here after move bishop to G5, so here the prearranged move was the move E6, here F4 was still prearranged, and now the last move that was prearranged by the organizer was the move B5. And okay, let's stop and evaluate the position, how to approach here, what to do from white's perspective. I really like this idea by Stockfish 13. I've covered, I think, one game in this particular line. Here E5, immediately breaking the center. We have D takes E5, F takes E5. We have still the spin against the queen, so that's why the only move that helps out black here is to move queen to C7. We have E takes F6. After queen to E5, it seems so that black has solved now all of the positional problems, because black can recapture the bishop, bishop to E2. We have queen to G5 and now castling, but I still like simply more this position of white. The problem is now that you cannot take the pawn. You would love to do this, G takes F6, but the problem is now you get this move, knight to E4, the queen gets endangered, and the problem is now after queen to E3, king to H1, you cannot take the knight. You get simply bishop to F3, and the rook on A8 is hanging. So simply the activity, I think, of white's pieces is simply that bothers black through the whole game. And I think in this position we should notice one thing, that all of the minor pieces of whites are out. So the bishop is out, these two knights are out, white has secured the king by castling. We still have a great activity on the F file. The problem of black is of course the lack of development. Of course black has the bishop pair, but so far the bishops haven't played, the bishops haven't participated in the game, so that's why having the pieces like this on the starting square is not good, of course, and still you need to lose several tempi in order to secure your king further. So it's simply much faster development here for white, although as we said, black has sort of a compensation, the bishop pair in an early stage of the game. So here after castling, we have rook to a7. You have seen the tactical problems after bishop to f3, so that's why Stofleis is getting out of these ideas, but also is trying to play the move rook to d7, getting the rook where the queen is on the d file, and then create some tactics of course on the d file. So but still queen to d3, here rook queen to e5, now knight to e4. Again, Stockfish 13 is centralizing this knight. The problem is now after move rook to d7, black doesn't have such a great activity because we have this counter attack, knight to f3 after queen to c7. If you take for instance rook takes d3, knight to e5 can happen, and you see now your rook is still hanging. I think there are now several problems here around the square f7, also around the square f6. Again, the f file is something that worries always here black in the continuation of the game. Still, these pieces haven't played so far in the game, simply a tactically lost battle for black here. So after move knight to f3, here queen to c7, so Stofleis is trying to stay with the queens on the board. We have queen to e3, and now bishop to b7. Now comes, I think, a great move by Stockfish 13. It's the move a4. a4 is breaking now the position on the queen side, because whatever you do, I don't think it's a good continuation for black. Even if you try b takes a4, this wasn't played in the game. In the game was b4. Stofleis played b4, but even if you try b takes a4, it's not so good because we can simply activate further our pieces, knight to g5 or rook to a4, of course. And I even like more rook to a4 because the rook gets into the game, then all of our pieces are playing. You see both of these rooks are playing, the knights are centralized, the bishop is playing, the queen is centralized, the pawn is dangerous. So all of the pieces are simply included in the attack. I really love these types of positions, these types of structures. It's an open game and you have already your pieces out. Even if you try something like bishop to e4, rook to e4 can happen. And I think in one moment we could even maybe try to sacrifice the rook on e6, then queen to e6. I think it could be possible. I haven't analyzed now with an engine this particular position, but maybe as a tactic it could work. Then maybe even include maybe bishop to c4, then bishop to e6. I always think there is something going on around the square e6, so I would for sure think about some kind of a tactic around that square. But let's see also if you take for instance queen to c2, it's not so good because I think in the Neither of Sicilian you should never evaluate the position, how many pawns you have on the board. I think the activity of the pieces is more important, because if you take then you get simply more and more pushed away. Here queen to b2, knight to d2, and maybe rook to b1. You see we are using the queen simply as a help in order to activate further our pieces, rook to b1, and I think even some sacrifices would be possible with rook to b7, paralyzing here really the position. So as said, it's you should never, I think, evaluate this position, how many pawns I have on the board. It's simply the most important thing is simply here to find the best new square on the board, to activate your piece further, to find new activities, to find new opportunities. So as said, here it's a tactically again lost position, I think, for black. So as said, after move a4, Stofleis realized probably the problems that the position could get too much open here on the queen side. Tried now the move b4 to lock the queen side, to paralyze the queen side, to simply close that side on the board. And here Stockfish plays king to h1, because there are always maybe some tactical possibilities with bishop to c5 when the knight moves. Maybe this could be sort of a trap, but that's why getting the king out of the potential range is perfectly fine, securing the king. Here bishop to e4, we have f takes g7, bishop to g7, and now bishop to e4, bishop to b2. Here Stofleis took a pawn, because even if you try to castle here, it's not so good because you get simply this idea. As we said in the beginning of the video, castling, I think it's not a possibility anymore. You are simply too pushed away. The knight is simply too far away from the defense, I think, of black's king, because you need, I think, here, even if you don't castle, even if you don't take here the pawn on b2, you need simply too many tempi in order to get your king to f6, then your knight on f6, pardon me. The knight would love to come on f6, then it would be a good defensive piece. But you see now you need at least 3 tempi. You need, like, I don't know, rook to e7, rook to d8, or maybe rook to d6, then knight to d7, and then knight to f6. So simply too much time in order to get your knight into the game. So the piece is simply too far away from the action, and Stockfish uses now this moment. As we said, even if you castle here, it's a suicide, because you get simply knight to g5, queen to h4 is a possibility, bishop to d3, even I think rook to f3, rook to h3 are possibilities. So black gets simply tactically smashed here. So that's why after move queen to e4, Stuflace decided to take the pawn and stay with the king in the center. It's a better maybe choice here, but still with several tactical problems here for black. After move bishop to b2, Stockfish attacks, of course, rook to b1, we have bishop to c3, and again this idea knight to g5. You see, knight to g5 is always happening, you cannot prevent this idea. There are now of course several threats. Knight to h7, knight to f7 is also an opportunity, followed with bishop to h5. So the only move that is defending the position for a while is to move h5, taking away the square for the bishop. Very important move now by Stuflace. We have now h3, we have rook to h6, and now queen to h4. We want still, of course, from white perspective, to take out the pawn, then also to take out the pawn on f7. Here we have knight to c6. Let's go back. I've analyzed here after potential h5. Even if you try here, let's see this possible continuation after a5. I wanted to show, for instance, what could happen, what kind of a tactic if you allow your opponent to get the bishop here on h5. Let's see, maybe something like knight to c6. You could lose the game even like this with queen to e6 if the bishop comes to an h5. So as I said, these are simply the tiny little tactics that could happen to you here for black's perspective. So that's why this h5 is really a must move. So far it's defending the position for a while, but still, of course, white is much better. So here h3, as said, rook to h6, queen to h4, knight to c6, and you see now again you're losing your h5 pawn. Very important stuff. So here bishop to g7, knight to f7, rook to h5, queen to h5, and now rook to f7. What we have in the position now is, of course, that white has the rook for two minor pieces, has also grabbed the pawn. But again, I'm pointing out the king's activity. The king is simply too long in the center. The king stayed simply too long in the center. Again, black will face some tactical problems. The activity of the rooks is simply too much to handle. This is really some wild stuff. The rook is pinned here. So in the continuation of the game, rook to b3, played by Stockfish. Stockfish is trying now to play rook to f3, simply continuing the pressure against this weak rook on f7. In the continuation, knight to d4, rook to g3. Rook to g3 is now, of course, the threat to play rook to g7. You cannot take because of the pin by the queen against the king. Bishop to f8, we have queen to g6, and now queen to e7, rook to d1, attacking the knight, and now e5 again, temporarily saving the position a little bit, fixing, trying to get these pieces glued together here by black. But still, of course, Stockfish can proceed with queen takes a6. We have queen to c5, and now some checks. You don't want to, of course, play more checks because you don't want to play perpetuals, because you don't want to get a draw here. The most important thing that we have to realize is this pass pawn. Stockfish created a pass pawn, very important. Here after move rook to g8, we have king to e7, and now Stockfish simply pushed this pass pawn. We have queen takes c2, rook to e1, attacking the pawn on e5. We have now b3, we have queen to c4, knight to e6, and now Stockfish also pushed the pawn further, a6. We have b2, queen to b7, check, now a new check, and now simply pushing the pawn further. We have queen to c1, and here Stockfish plays simply queen to b4, queen to d7, and now queen to a4, check, and promote simply the queen. Here Stuflace plays, of course, queen to e1 after king to h2. The problem is now black cannot promote the queen immediately. Queen to b1 is simply losing because you get simply queen to e8. Whatever you do, if you try king to d6, it's not possible. You get queen to c6, the checkmate. So you would be forced to play king to f6, but now you get simply queen to f3. And even if you try here something like queen to f5 to cover, then queen to f5, we can simply take. If you try, for instance, knight to f4, it's again not much better because you get simply queen to c6 and you get checkmated. If you try here king to f5, then queen to g4 is checkmate, so you would be forced to escape here on e7. But again, queen to a3, you see how you can use the queens in order to cut off files, in order to cut off diagonals. Now it's again a checkmate here, forced checkmate, queen to a3. You can play this one, but now rook to f8, rook takes f8, and now queen to f8, it's checkmate. So you see, after move king to h1, you cannot promote so far the queen immediately. You have to secure the king further. In the continuation of the game, queen to f2 was played. We have now queen to e8 anyway, king to f6, queen to c6, and now queen to f5. Here, even if you try b1 the promotion, again you get simply queen to e6. Again, you're simply lost. So here in the game, after queen to c6, we have queen to f5. But now Stockfish prepares, of course, a cool move here, rook to g3 followed with rook to f3, because you cannot cover with the knight. The queen is pinning the knight, of course, here on the 6th rank. So that's why b1 the promotion, and we have now really wild position. 4 queens are on the board, but we will see now really a brilliant forced 10 move checkmate sequence. Here queen to d8 first to check, we have rook to e7. Now Stockfish can take queen to f8, rook to f7. Here queen to d8, again a new check. Again Stockfish covers, but now queen to h8. You have only one square here. It's of course king to f7. Now the queen is of course threatening some ideas. Here we can also try this move, queen to g8 is also a serious threat, so that's why queen to h7, it prolongs the game only. But here rook to f3, we have king to g6. Even if you try knight to f4, nothing dramatically changed, because you get simply rook to f8, pardon me, queen to f8, you have king to g6, and now queen to g4 is again a checkmate. So here after move rook to f3, we have king to g6, and now queen to f6, king to h5, and now a beautiful checkmate with the pawn. It's g4, and it was game over. So brilliant stuff in the Ne4 Sicilian. Really beautiful game. I really love this line against the Ne4. Let's go back with the move e5 here. E5 opening the position, and the cool part about this line, I think, is that black is always to react. Black has to go into this line, because after move f takes e5, you don't have better moves. You have to play queen to c7. We take, you take, but now after castling, you see now we have already 3 pieces out. The king is secured. The f file is very cool. a4 is a possibility. We have seen knight to e4 is a possibility. Queen to d3, queen to f3 is a possibility. So again, white is simply much faster in development. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. The interesting stuff in the Ne4 Sicilian. We'll see what will happen in the continuation of the tournament. If you want to see some brilliant attacks like this, check out my commented chess games played by computer series. Here's the link of our playlist. More than 200 games played by top engines, Lila C0, Stockfish, and Alpha Zero. And if you want to see the humans battling it out in their best chess games, check out my best chess games of all times. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.